Is about semiconductors. Semiconductors. First thing is about the vacuum tubes. Those days, if you see, there were the fish tank மாதிரி பெரிய பெரிய டிவி லைக் மைக்ரோவேவ் அவன் பெருசா டிவி மாதிரி இருக்கு. ஃபிஷ் டேங்க் மாதிரி எது இருந்தாலும் it consists of vacuum tube inside. Picture tube is to be there. Okay, what is the purpose of those vacuum tubes? Is to allow unidirectional current to flow through. It will allow, the whole point is unidirectional current. Okay, if you know, this is the vacuum tube. You have a negative electrode here, a positive electrode here. Current will flow like this. I mean, electrons will flow like this. Opposite direction is current, whatever it is. So you can determine the direction of the current in the vacuum tube. So it allows unidirectional current to flow through. That's the whole purpose of the vacuum tube. This was this vacuum tubes consumed high power. High power. It needed high voltage to function, and then it needed two electrodes and vacuum inside, vacuum and electrodes, and it's not eco-friendly. Is not eco-friendly when it has to be disposed and all. Okay, these are the disadvantage of using a vacuum tube. At that point of time, they found out semiconductors. Semiconductors are those which are group 14 elements in your periodic table. You know, let's write the periodic table. This is hydrogen, this is helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, MsP, Sca, chlorine, and argon, and this is sulfur and all that, you know it. Okay, so then this is enough. So there will be germanium below. Your class is getting recorded. So then the silicon germanium, this is a group 14 element. This is group 14 element. Okay, so we generally the silicon and germanium. So silicon and germanium are classified as semiconductors. Bhumi thodna they got silicon and germanium, which were semiconductors. Where the semiconductors, how different were it from vacuum tube? In the place of vacuum tube, they found out this, and this were the like crystals. Silicon itself is like a crystal bonded. Okay, by means of covalent bond, you get a crystal-like structure. In that, when the electron leaves the bond and starts flowing through, it flows on the surface of the crystal. When the electron leaves, leaves behind a hole. The electron vacancy is called the hole. So thus you can have electron current as well as hole current. There are two different currents in this case. In this lesson, it's not current electricity. So when the electron leaves, there's also hole. Then how is hole current? The electron from the adjacent bond comes and fills this hole, thereby leaving the hole here. And then electron from an adjacent bond comes and fills, and the hole keeps on traveling. If you notice, the hole keeps on traveling within the core. Within the core, the hole travels, and the electrons travel along the surface. Along the surface. So within the crystal. So it doesn't need vacuum, it doesn't need electrode. And it needs very small, to break the covalent bond, you need very small thermal excitation. So it doesn't need high power, it doesn't need high voltage. Many advantages of such crystalline structures such as silicon and germanium, which are basically group 14 elements. This is what is classified as semiconductors. So thus you understand that in a semiconductor you have hole current and also electron current. Electron vacancy is what is called a hole. And as the electron keeps on traveling, more and more electron keeps on traveling, more and more holes are created, and these holes are filled by the adjacent electrons in the covalent bond. This hole also keeps on traveling within the core. So this is what generally happens in a semiconductor. So, but if you see, you can there are many questions that arises. Okay, why is then carbon not a semiconductor? Why is only silicon and germanium a semiconductor? We learned that carbon is there are allotropes of carbon. Okay, so this allotrope of carbon. Okay, not only that, I'll tell you the reason. This requires 7 electron volt ionization. That's called energy gap. Energy gap is different from ionization energy. Ionization energy is the energy required to take electron from valence shell to infinity. Okay, whereas that is ionization energy. This is energy gap, which is the energy required for an electron to go from valence band to conduction band in order to conduct. So it's a major difference that people has to understand the difference between energy gap, or it's also called forbidden energy gap. Energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band is called Eg, It's also called forbidden energy gap. That gap for a carbon is 7 electron volt, which is very, very high value. Anything greater than 3 electron volt will behave like an insulator. So then they are automatically carbon is an insulator. But having said that, if you would have come across something called a graphite. How is graphite a conductor? Graphite is a special allotrope where in that case each carbon is associated with 3 other carbons only. So then one of the carbon bond, covalent bond, has got 1 electron. So that is always conductive. So that is the allotrope. You would have studied it 9th or 10th. One small para will come. So then that's why carbon is not, graphite is able to conduct. This is a special case. But however, generally carbon is not conducting. It is an allotrope and it doesn't conduct. It's not even classified as a semiconductor. Okay. So coming back, you understood what is an electron current and what is a hole current, which flows only in a semiconductor, and it requires very less voltage when compared. This requires less power. This requires less voltage. A small thermal excitation is sufficient enough for the electron to jump from valence band to conduction band to conduct. It doesn't need vacuum. It doesn't need electrodes. It's very eco-friendly and all that. Only thing is, slowly it's getting depleted from the பூமிக்கு அடியிலேருந்து கம்மி ஆயினே வருது. அது ஒன்று தான் நமக்கு பெரிய டிஸ்அட்வான்டேஜ். அது டிப்ளீட் ஆகி கம்ப்ளீட்டாக இல்லாத வரைக்கும் they'll keep doing and then they'll find out something else, maybe something else will come up. So this is what is introduction to the lesson. Okay, so now in semiconductors you have a simple semiconductor and compound semiconductor. Simple semiconductor is இப்போ தான் பார்த்தோம் silicon or germanium is classified as simple. Compound semiconductor gallium arsenide. We learned it in electric current lesson. That's one example. I know you can surf and know more, but this is the only thing. Cadmium sulfate, I don't know. Just check out on the compound semiconductor. But however, they will not ask this. It's only for our own knowledge. But what is that they'll ask is, there are two types of semiconductor. One is intrinsic semiconductor. Another is extrinsic semiconductor. Intrinsic is a pure form of semiconductor and extrinsic is an impure semiconductor. That is taking a pure semiconductor and adding a dopant impurity. Taking how do you create an extrinsic? Take an intrinsic or a pure form and add it with an impurity. The impurity that is added is called dopant, and the process is called doping. By means of doping, you are able to create an extrinsic semiconductor. So intrinsic is a pure form. However pure it is, it's like ideal gas. We won't get ideal gas, right? Like that, that's only a hypothetical situation. So even in pure form, you have 1 out of 10,000 parts of impurity will still be present. Some kind of impurity will always be present there, but we still classify it as intrinsic. How do we get the intrinsic semiconductor? Let's talk only about intrinsic now, and we'll go to extrinsic later. So take group 14 element, which is such a silicon. It has got 4, it's a tetravalent element. So 4 electrons in the outermost shell, bonded with 4 other silicon atoms on all the 4 sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see that you got a 4 covalent bond on all the 4 sides? Like that, you take this silicon, put a silicon here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So covalent bond here. Another silicon. 1, 2, 3, 4. A covalent bond here and here. A silicon here. 1, 2, 3, 4. A silicon here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So like this, the structure continues. Just a part of a big crystal. A small part of a big crystal. So what do you say? In intrinsic semiconductor, it's pure semiconductor. However, 1 out of 10,000 parts of impurity could be present. Where we take a tetravalent atom such as silicon, surround it with 4 other silicon atoms. You get 4 covalent bonds on all the 4 sides. On thermal excitation, one of the electron can set itself free from the covalent bond and is ready to conduct. But you need some thermal excitation because you need to break it away from the covalent bond. On thermal excitation, the electron sets itself free to conduct. Are you clear? Free to conduct. So when the electron moves, it leaves behind a hole. Now to fill this hole, the electron from an adjacent silicon bond comes and fills in the electron. So then the hole moves here and the electron comes in here. Thus you get electron current and hole current. Okay, so then in this case, Ne is equal to NH is equal to Ni, where Ni is the intrinsic charge carrier concentration. Intrinsic intrinsic charge carrier concentration, Ni, concentration, sorry. Okay, so Ne, number of electrons equal to number of holes is equal to intrinsic charge carrier concentration, because how many electrons is going, that many holes will be created. So this is about this. So what did I say? The intrinsic pure form, silicon surrounded by 4 of the silicon. On thermal excitation, electrons are free to conduct, and Ne is equal to NH is equal to Ni. And these are the key points about intrinsic semiconductor. So you can talk about silicon, or you can even take germanium. But generally, when this is what it is. You can also draw about germanium, same thing only. Next is extrinsic semiconductor. In extrinsic semiconductor, you can classify it as two different semiconductors. One is p-type semiconductor, other is an n-type semiconductor. Okay, what is a p-type semiconductor? Is group 14 element. I'll go back to the periodic table. This group 14. You have to dope it. Take the pure one and add impurity. The impurity will be this one, group 13 element. The group 13 element will be the impurity. So let's take here aluminum to be an example. You can take boron or aluminum, but I'm choosing aluminum to be an example, or you can even choose boron. Okay, so let's see if I'm talking about a p-type. Okay, let me take an aluminum and put it at the center. So it's got 3 electrons in the outermost shell because it's trivalent impurity. So then bond it with silicon on all the 4 sides. You get 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 colon 1. Silicon all the 1, 2, 3, 4. Silicon 1, 2, 3, 4. And a silicon on this side 1, 2, 3, 4 leaves behind one of the bond which is electron deficient. Can you see one electron is deficient in one of the covalent bond? So thus you say we take a trivalent dopant and surround it with tetravalent silicon. It forms 4 covalent bond, out of which one of the bond is electron deficient. We don't say 3 covalent bond. I don't know why they say that. We can say 3 covalent bond. The other bond is not complete because it's got. You can also write like that. The fourth one being electron deficient. So which means there's a pre-existing hole. This is just a small part of a large crystal I'm talking about. The chinna minute thing, like you have an excess hole. Like this, you have many structures, so there'll be many holes, which is pre-existing. Correct? So then that shows that in this, to fill this electron, this bond from the adjacent silicon will come and jump in electron from it, and then hole keeps on traveling. So in this, the number of holes will be much greater than number of electrons. But the fact that it is when a small little structure itself, there is a hole excess, and just like zillions of it in a crystal. So then therefore number of holes is much greater than number of electrons. So then the charge carrier concentration of holes is, the keyword is the charge carrier concentration of the hole is much greater than the number of electron. The hole current is more than the electron current. So so then you can complete this. You can draw silicon on all sides and have a covalent bond here. You know what has to be done. Yeah. So you understood all that. Okay. So you've finished this structure. So then thus you understand in a p-type semiconductor, a trivalent dopant is placed at the center with silicon surrounded, tetravalent silicon surrounding on all the 4 sides, which leaves one of the covalent bond out of the 4 to be electron deficient, which means there's a pre-existing hole. And so the whole current keeps on traveling by the method I said, and Ne is much greater than NH. So you're able to disturb the charge carrier concentration. Normally in a pure form, Ne is equal to NH is equal to Ni. That's a basic thing, isn't it? Ne is equal, but you're able to disturb the charge carrier concentration by putting a dopant. So the charge carrier concentration is, we are able to alter it. We are able to alter the charge carrier concentration according to our wish. Your hole becomes more. So this in this, if you see, it's a trivalent impurity. It's already pre-existing hole, which means able to accept an electron. So it's called acceptor impurity. This impurity that we are adding is called acceptor impurity. Okay, acceptor impurity. Now it's able to accept an electron, so it's known as acceptor impurity. Okay, for now we'll leave it like that. This is all the points, and if you see, I'll tell you one more point. Okay, between boron and aluminum, which are both group 13 elements, which one is better? Let's see like that. You know, boron has got hydrogen, helium, beryllium, boron 5, so it's got 2 shells, whereas aluminum itself has got 3 shells. The electron affinity for boron will be greater than electron affinity for aluminum. Here, this is an acceptor impurity. So acceptor impurity is going to accept an electron. If it's going to add, so which means electron affinity has got to be more. Do you agree with me? So don't you think that since it's an acceptor impurity, boron is a better acceptor impurity than aluminum? You understand? So like that. Okay. But however, they also say one more point which you can explore and tell me the answer. As usual, I don't know the answer for this. I'll tell you my doubt. You can you can WhatsApp me. Okay, the boron is a better electron affinity because the number of shells. So I would, for an acceptor impurity, I would always choose a boron over aluminum. But however, when you choose a dopant, the general condition that they say is just choose the one which has got similar structure. So if it's got two shells, the silicon has got number of shells matching, the crystal structure will be good. Okay, so then, but is it okay to select one period lesser? Would it affect more? That's the answer I need, because boron is a better one than aluminum with regard to silicon. But however, that doesn't match with the number of the size, the more or less of the compatible size. They say the compatible size is what you should choose. But that is not that I'm not answering.
It's not.
And listen.
Okay, it's just that boron is like boron or aluminum. It can accept a specific number of electrons, and the one which can give that specific amount of electrons will be more compatible. So basically, it means almost the same amount of shells.
It means the same amount of shells.
Yeah, because the stability will be the same, almost.
Why do you say that?
Uh, chemistry level.
So, actually speaking, they prefer boron over aluminum for the fact that the electron affinity is greater for boron. So, since it's an acceptor impurity which is able to accept an electron, boron will be able to effectively accept more easy electron than aluminum. So, in the while doping, ideally here I should not write aluminum. I should have used only boron than aluminum. There's nothing wrong in putting aluminum, but however, which is preferable is boron. Let's keep it like that. Okay. So then this is all about a p-type semiconductor, where it's a trivalent impurity. Okay, and in this, number of holes is much greater than number of electrons. These are the key points. Okay, and it's an acceptor impurity. And okay, next is n-type semiconductor. It is actually tetravalent, pentavalent. Pentavalent, which means this is group 13, this will be group 15. Group 14 in the pakam 13 இருக்கும், in 15. This group 15 element is what is getting doped here. And group 15 elements such as phosphorus. Let's go to the period here. Here, but nitrogen is not chosen. Again, they'll ask you that question. Even though it belongs to group 15, why is nitrogen not chosen as a dopant? Nitrogen forms a molecule, doesn't form a crystal. Number one. And nitrogen forms a nitrogen silicate or something like that, which can also behave like an insulator. Okay, nitrogen silicate or molecule form. It can also behave like an insulator. So nitrogen cannot be first molecule formation. Second is insulator. So then, therefore, only phosphorus or anything below it is preferable. So when you take phosphorus and let's dope it. Phosphorus is, so I'm writing here about N type. Take phosphorus, which is a pentavalent impurity, which means one electron is excess, and dope it with silicon on all the four sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Silicon here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Silicon here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have a bond. So you have a loosely bound electron. Can you see, which is not a part of the bond already? It's loosely, right here, loosely bound. It's not even part of any bond. So the energy here, at least you have to break in the p type. At least you have to break the covalent bond. Here the energy will be so less, obviously, because it's already a free electron. On slight excitation itself, it's able to conduct this one. Yeah. So then that's already said free loosely bound is able to conduct, and though you can complete the whole structure. So then therefore in this pre-existing electron is more. And so Ne is much greater than NH. The electron current carrying charge carry concentration is much more than the holes. And we say that it's electron donor. So it's called donor, the impurity is called donor impurity. Okay, this is called, whereas this is called acceptor impurity, this is called donor impurity.
இந்த இடத்துல வந்து phosphorus தான் preferable.
Okay, phosphorus is more preferable than என்ன சொல்ற?
Yeah, அது
As
electronegative.
you go below, the number of shells will be more. It will
Yeah.
be able to give out more electron easily. So what is preferable is one below the period.
Also like bismuth or something.
Yes, absolutely. But now இப்போதைக்கு I'm just not getting into. They ask you which is better, then you go for all this. But just generally I'm telling you. But here we can simply write with a phosphorus, because phosphorus also can be done. But when it comes to which is better, the one below is better, and so on. So donor impurity, it's called a donor impurity. The dopant is phosphorus, which is a pentavalent element. Already pre-existing electron is there in a small structure. So you can imagine how many electrons will be there by default. So N is much, much greater than NH. And you can also talk in terms of electron affinity, which one down the period is better and stuff like that. Okay. So that completes the explanation for a p-type and an n-type semiconductor. Next is next that I have to talk about is band gap theory. Band gap theory. Band gap theory is this: you have a valence shell here, and there's a this is a valence band, and this is a conduction band. It's a conduction band. Let's write valence band here, and this is a conduction band. And they'll ask you what is a Fermi level. Okay, what is the valence band? The valence electrons are found in the valence band. And what is the conduction? This is actually a low energy band. Low energy band, whereas conduction band is a high energy band. Energy band. Okay, this will be always fully filled. If it's for a metal, full for everything, there will be a valence shell. Obviously, they're fully filled. Whereas here it will be partially filled or empty. Conduction band may be empty or partially filled. It can't be fully filled. Correct? Partially filled. So these are the points about valence band and conduction band. Valence band is a low energy band which involves valence electrons, and it's a fully filled band. And the gap between the valence band and the conduction band is what is called energy gap. People misunderstand this with ionization energy. Never do that. This is energy gap. Energy gap. It's also known as forbidden energy gap. Forbidden energy gap. That is, no electrons will either jump up. The forbidden from having any electrons. It's called forbidden energy gap. So you understood this is the basic structure. You should also know what is a Fermi level. Fermi level. Generally, what is a Fermi level? At absolute zero. This keyword should be there. At absolute zero, the electrons occupy some highest energy octet, some highest. Everything will have a highest energy octet among what is available. Correct. So at absolute zero, the electrons occupy highest energy level, and that's known as Fermi level. That Fermi level may differ for a semiconductor and for a metal. For a semiconductor, it can be different Fermi level, and the metal, it can be different, because highest energy level may vary for a semiconductor and for a metal. They generally say the Fermi level. So this is the definition. At absolute zero, the electron can occupy a highest energy level, and that is known as Fermi level. And for a semiconductor, they say that the Fermi level is the highest energy level among the valence band. Valence band itself is lower energy band. In that, there will be highest energy level. So then this Fermi level for a semiconductor is the highest level that the electron can occupy in absolute zero in the valence band. Okay, for a metal, it will be highest level in the conduction band. So then the highest level the electrons can occupy at absolute zero in the conduction band. Like this they will say. But however, I will tell you what you should write. You can also write like this, not a problem. But when you draw the Fermi level diagram, so this is what it is. You understood, no? So I'm going to tell you, like how do you explain the difference between metals, insulators, and semiconductors? Semiconductors and insulators. With the valence band theory, you should explain. That's the question. So you do a valence band and you do a conduction band, correct? And you will have a forbidden energy gap, EG, which will be less for a metal. It can also be overlapping. This will be valence band, and this can be conduction band. Can you see both of them for metals? For a metal, it can be with a smaller energy gap, or it can be overlapping, or with a small energy gap. Are you clear? Energy gap. So in this, it's a metal, so you can say fully filled valence band, and you can say partially filled. because the metal can readily conduct. Partially filled conduction band. Okay, but in this it's overlapping, obviously both of them will be filled because it's overlapping with the valence band. So when does this occur? When does this occur? I'll tell you what. In the overlapping condition occurs for anything which ends with s2, 1s2, 2s2, which is hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, is an example of overlapping. Zinc is another example of overlapping because it ends with 2, you know better. So anything which ends with 1 will be having a smaller, that's how what it is. So then let's say sodium, aluminum, all of them which has got not S1, it ends with S1, will have smaller energy gap. This is the way we explain for a, you just say this is valence band, conduction band, and blah blah blah. This is a metal, right? For a metal, you know that the Fermi level when I draw is the highest level of the conduction band, correct? But actually speaking, in this I should draw like this, highest level of the conduction band. I can write like that, yeah, or I can also write like this because this is a they actually write the Fermi level here, which is lying on the conduction band, which is lying on the conduction band. That doesn't matter where it is. It depends on metal from metal where the line is going to be. So it has to be in the overlapping layer is where the Fermi level is. Fermi level is. Are you clear? Okay, let's come to semiconductors. With regard to semiconductor, you know that there is a valence band. Okay, well, let me talk about insulator first. Okay, let me take the insulator below. So let's write insulator. Insulator, this is the valence band, and that far away you put the conduction band because you know the energy gap will be much larger. Eg will be greater than greater than 3 electron volt. I told you insulator property is 3 electron volt. It's not possible for it to jump from valence. This is the Eg. Not possible for it to jump from a valence band to the conduction band. The highest level of the valence band, the lowest level of the conduction band, or the separation is what is Eg, and can't exceed. We can't possibly give a 3 electron volt, so it's never going to conduct. And that explains why carbon will also not conduct because it's got 7 electron volt. This is about insulator, and in insulator the Fermi level will be between valence band and conduction band in the line like this. Okay, next one is about semiconductor. Semiconductor, you have a valence band, and konja kammiya you put the gap and see is lesser than Eg is lesser than 0. No, lesser than 3 electron volts, shows that it is possible for the electrons to jump from the valence band to the conduction band. Then light it valence band, this is the conduction band, and all that. Okay, this here it's be empty, completely empty conduction band when you write, correct? Because it's insulator. This is fully filled valence band, of course. Filled valence, full everywhere the valence band is fully filled only. Here it's fully filled valence band, but here it's empty now. But however, when you give energy, it will tend to jump from valence band to conduction band. Okay, so then you understood all this. Okay, so this is a difference between how to explain the band using band gap theory, how to classify metals, semiconductors, and insulators. Next is using band gap theory. Using band gap theory, this is the question which will be coming for exam. Using band gap theory, you have to explain the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic semiconductor. Okay, using band gap theory, you have to explain. This is where you get lots of inputs. Okay, you have band gap theory means you will have a valence band and you'll have a conduction band. What this is the energy gap, as you know. We're talking about intrinsic, which is a pure form. Okay, in the pure form, you know the Fermi level for semiconductor itself is lies somewhere here. This is where the Fermi level is. Just draw it and leave it like that. Now what you do is you put a patta here, different levels. Okay, layers, and you have electrons in this. You know the number of electrons will be equal to 2 electrons, 2 electrons, 2 electrons, 2 holes, 2 holes, 2 holes. And then just draw some electron here which shows the electron jumping from here to there and creating holes here. And can you see the whole current is within the core itself? This is the valence band. It doesn't go to the whole current, necessarily doesn't go to the conduction band. So this is valence band and this is the conduction band. And what else you can say? You can say Ne is equal to NH, and this happens at greater than 0 Kelvin. Okay, so then that's what it is. This explains everything. Can you see this explains everything? So this is the way you draw for a, this is the intrinsic semiconductor, correct? What I've drawn here is intrinsic because I've put Ne is equal to NH, which means I've drawn intrinsic. Intrinsic means it's pure silicon or pure germanium. And this energy gap for silicon, always they'll ask you the energy gap for silicon and energy gap for germanium. Energy gap for silicon itself is 1.1 electron volt. Always they'll ask you this question. Any paper will have the energy gap for germanium is 0.7 electron volt. Okay, this is something you need to mug up. Okay, silicon and germanium, and that shows that. So can you see germanium's got lesser energy gap, easy to conduct. But however, we chose silicon. I think because silicon is available in plenty, then compared to germanium, I can't say any other reason. So that's what it is. They'll ask you definitely for the EG. And never misunderstand this for ionization energy. The energy gap is the energy required for electron to jump from valence band and go to the conduction band, whereas ionization energy is for it to go from valence band to infinity. So this covers the pure semiconductors. And for N type and P type and N type, I have to explain N type. I have to explain the band gap theory. So let's explain that. I'm recording now. It's getting recorded now. Yeah. So then you have a in a P type, you have a this is the valence band and this is the conduction band. Okay. In this, you have to put that pattai thingy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here you draw. It's a P type, right? Where holes are greater. Just draw 2 electrons here. But whereas put 4 holes here, which shows that holes are majority. So then NH is the conducting holes is greater than conducting electrons. So NH is greater, much greater than Ne. But in this, additionally, one point you should write: it is an P type is an acceptor impurity because it's already a pre-existing hole. It's called acceptor impurity. So then, therefore, it will have an acceptor energy level. The acceptor energy level will lie just above the valence band. This is the valence band. This is the conduction band, and this is the acceptor energy level EA. So can you see that energy EG now is not between valence band and conduction band, it becomes between acceptor energy level. EA is called acceptor energy level. Okay, therefore by doping we are able to reduce the energy gap. So little energy is enough for it to excite and for electrons to travel from valence band to conduction. Acceptor energy level is lying just above the valence band. So then acceptor energy level is just above the valence band. So for an electron to jump, it has to jump only from acceptor energy level to the conduction band, and the EG required is actually 0.05 electron volt. This is for a P type. Imagine what I've done is for a P type. But if I do it for N type, it will be miraculous. Okay. You have a valence band and you have a conduction band. And put that pattai. And in this, it's N type semiconductor. In N type, electrons has to be more. And N type is a donor impurity. And the ED, which is the donor impure energy level, will lie just below the conduction band. Just below the conduction band, the donor energy level. So then energy required is only so much. So then Ag is 0.01 electron. Can you see the amount of 15? But compared to this, this is 0.05. So then, therefore, even better than P type is the N type impurity. And here we have to say that electron is much more. So then do more electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 also you put only less holes here, and rest of it is all electrons. That's all. Sorry, in one line there has to be only 2 electrons. Make sure that. So then in electrons is much greater than holes. So are you clear? So then this is about N type, and the main point is this donor energy level, and which reduces the energy gap. And what is the energy gap required? These are the key points that you should know. This is the acceptor energy level, and that is the. So then here it's just below the conduction band, which makes it easier for the electron to jump from that level to the pre-existing electrons are already lying in this donor energy level, so it requires only a little energy for it to jump to conduction. Clear? So next thing that I want to teach you, is a PN junction diode. So let's go to a PN junction diode. PN junction diode. You know that we have already learned it in current electricity. Diode is represented like this, and this is P type, and this is N type with 2 electrodes. This is what is a diode. but you can also write it like this. Okay, so we can also draw it like this. This is the p type and this is the n type. This is the p type and this is the n type, and p type has got majority as holes, minority is electron, and the n type has got majority as electrons. The minority is holes. Actually, we are sandwiching the p type and n type together, but we don't say that. Actually, it's not as easy as bringing a p type and n type together. It has to be developed into a crystal. The p type and n type should be grated together and form a single crystal. The semiconductor formation, how to make that is technology. So it's not chumma bread sandwich and jam. It's not like that. So, but they just say that, but it's not that. The p type and an n type are brought together and grated together to grown into a single crystal, where at the junction, the charge carrier concentration will be very high. Charge carrier concentration will be high. சிக்னல்ல நிக்கிறோம், அந்த சிக்னல்ல வண்டி ஒன்று ஒன்று பக்கத்தில் பக்கத்தில் இருக்கும், சிக்னல்லேருந்து வெளியே வந்தால் கொஞ்சம் தள்ளி தள்ளி இருக்கு. So that shows that at the junction, the charge carrier concentration is so high that the holes from the p type will start moving into the n type, and the electron from the n type will move into the p type. So the majority charge carriers are flowing. Thus, the majority charge carriers are flowing, and that's called diffusion current. The diffusion current is the flow of majority charge carriers. So the holes from the p type move into the n type, the electron from the n type move into p type, forming a majority charge carrier, which is called diffusion current. As these majority flows, can you see the holes are moving in like that? Leaves behind an immobile negative ion, because the positive charge is going, it leave behind a negative ion. So when as the hole move that side, it leave behind a negative immobile negative ion on the p region, and as electron jump here, it leaves behind a immobile positive ion on the n region. So then there is an electric field which is developed in the opposite direction. This region is called depletion region. Depletion region is the electric field region which is deplete of charges. Deplete anga charges irukadhu. It is deplete of charges. Okay, so then thus you have a p-n junction diode. A p-n junction diode is where p-type and n-type are grated together to form a single crystal. P-type has got majority as holes and n-type has got majority as electrons. At the junction, there's high level charge carrier concentration, due to which the majority charge carrier, that is holes from the p-type, move to n-type, and electrons from n-type move to p-type, causing a diffusion current. While it does so, it leaves behind immobile ions, negative in the p-type and a positive in the n-type at the junction, thereby creating an electric field in the opposite direction, and that region is known as depletion region. As more and more is the diffusion current. As the diffusion current, that's the majority charge carrier, keeps on increasing, depletion region keeps on widening. The electric field becomes stronger, and the depletion region becomes wider and wider, thereby creating a potential barrier VB, which is a barrier in this direction. It's a barrier which is created for the flow of majority. The majority charge carrier will slow down, and the minority charge carrier will start flowing. What is minority? That is, the electrons from the p type will move to the n type, and the holes from the n type will start moving into the p type. We'll say the electrons from n type will start moving into p type, and the holes from the p type, no, I'm saying minority, machi solren. Holes from the n type will move to p type, and the electrons from the p type will start moving into n type. இப்படி இருந்தா போதும். You don't have to write will move, because we can't complete the paper. MCQ is eating all our time. So just மட்டும் எழுதி விட்டுருங்க. அப்புறமா elaborate time இருந்தால் you can elaborate, but never waste time in elaborate questions, because கடகடன்னு முடிச்சுட்டு MCQ போகணும். So அப்புறமா fill in the blanks மாதிரி, if you have time, you can fill in more information on elaborate questions. Okay, so the depletion region, as the diffusion current increases, the depletion region keeps on widening. That's the depletion region is a region which is deplete of charges, which creates a potential barrier, and which slows down the diffusion current, allows the minority to flow through. The flow of minority charge current is called drift current. At some point, for some barrier voltage, the diffusion current will become equal to drift current, and that will be in equilibrium. So when you buy a p-n junction diode, it will be in equilibrium, where there will be no current, and when moment you set up connected when you forward bias or reverse bias, depending on how you want, the current will start flowing. So this is the notes on every time they'll ask you PN junction diode notes. More than anything, the graph is what is very, very important. And a PN junction diode graph, this is a okay, this is just PN junction diode. We have not even forward biased. So now we have to forward bias. So on forward biasing, let's see how it's going to behave. You take a PN junction diode, connect a P type to a positive and N type to a negative through some resistor. So this is getting forward biased. The barrier voltage that we did is in this direction, right? Applied voltage is in this direction. So what happens? The net barrier voltage now decreases because this is already pre-existing. Now either one you're turning the knob and going on increasing the voltage. So VB minus V will become the net barrier potential is reducing. Can you see? Net barrier potential, which means it will offer less resistance to diffusion current. Majority charge carrier will start flowing. Correct, in forward bias mode. That is why you will have milliamps current, because majority is flowing through. And so milliamps current is a big current when it comes to semiconductor. Okay. So then this is what happens. So you can write in your own words. So you're doing forward biasing. And when you do that, you know that the applied voltage is from left to right, whereas the barrier voltage is from N type to P type. You can't write right to left because it won't understand. They won't understand. So N type to P type. And therefore, the potential barrier reduces like this. And the net potential barrier decreases. The majority charge carrier starts flowing. The equilibrium gets disturbed. That's the keyword. Equilibrium gets disturbed. And the majority is charge milliamps. Okay, so this is what it is. Next is we're going to reverse bias. So when you're going to reverse bias, you're going to connect this like this, and P type to negative terminal and N type to a positive terminal, which shows that it's getting reverse biased. So this is inga resistor connect paniko. So this is getting reverse bias. If you're going to reverse bias, you know that the barrier potential is always from N type to P type, and here applied potential is also from right to left. So then therefore the barrier potential and applied potential are adding up, thereby creating more barrier potential, which means only the minority or only the drift current will flow through. So then therefore that is only a microamps current. In reverse bias mode, the minority flowing through will result only in microamps. In fact, we will say it's not even conducting. Okay, we will consider it as not even conducting, but however, minority is flowing. Okay, so this is what it is. And the graph pertaining to this is very important, both forward bias and reverse bias. I'll tell you one graph. Don't ask me for the meaning of this. This is just vertical line. And this is for forward bias, where it's VB minus V. I'm doing like this, like this, like this, doing like this, like this, like this. And can you see this will be Q into VB minus V or V minus VB, the magnitude of it will be the work done necessary for the electrons to conduct. Okay, for the other one, put a bigger gap, because it's Q into VB plus V. So this is the diagram that you have to graph without questions, because I don't know to explain this. This gives you the work done or the energy required. Okay, so next is graph is something that I can explain that is very, very important. This is called IV characteristics. They'll always ask this question, IV characteristics, where this is the forward bias or a positive voltage. This is the reverse bias or a negative voltage. And this is milliamps current. This is microamps current, which I already taught you in electric current lesson. So in the forward bias mode, this is the key point you should know. When I'm drawing the graph, you should draw it along the x-axis for some time. And then only it should increase parabolically. What is this? Why is that current is zero? And all that I'll answer now. And the reverse bias mode, it's going to be closer to x-axis, and then it's going to be like this. This is steeply increasing. However, steeply increasing, it's only microamps. You don't have to care. But this is called breakdown voltage. V breakdown. I don't want to call it as VB, because VB is the barrier potential. I don't want to confuse. So this is called V breakdown or breakdown voltage. This, where it's shooting up, the current is starting to increase, is called knee voltage. Knee voltage. It's also called threshold voltage. So knee voltage or threshold voltage. So why is that here? I'll explain why the current is zero from here to here. The current is zero. Let's do resistance. This is an IV graph. When you put a slope, you'll get 1 by R is equal to I by V. here the current itself is 0, which means resistance is infinity. And this graph is applicable for an ideal diode. This graph that I've drawn is for an ideal diode. For an ideal diode, resistance is infinity, and so it does not conduct initially. But beyond the knee voltage or the threshold voltage, the current starts drastically increasing. But still milliamps only. Are you clear? So you understand, this is also called cut-in voltage. Very, very important point. The three terms, they might say anything, you can't come back saying I didn't know this term. So knee voltage, threshold voltage. What is a cut-in voltage? The cut-in voltage for silicon, let's talk about cut-in voltage. For a silicon will be different, for a germanium will be different. A cut-in voltage for silicon is 0.7 electron volt is the cut-in voltage for silicon, and 0.3 electron volt is a cut-in voltage for germanium. Some are clear? Okay, I'm very happy. So then cut-in voltage for siliconium is 0.7, and for germanium it's 0.3 electron volt. So that's about cut-in voltage. So okay, so this is what it is. They'll ask you about ideal diode. Why is the current 0? Because for an ideal diode, resistance is infinity. After the knee voltage or threshold voltage, the ideal diode is no more ideal, and the resistance starts decreasing, and so the current starts slowly increasing, and that's why it's the first quadrant is like this, is breakdown voltage and all. Are you clear? So this is the graph they'll ask you. There's so many important points in this graph with all this electron volt value. Next is next is the rectifier. Lesson is going to complete. So then next is, what is the purpose of this? You should know what is a rectifier. Rectifier is like, one is a half wave rectifier, other is a full wave rectifier. A half wave rectifier consists of a transformer, which is a step down transformer, and to this input, this is primary, is connected to a voltage input Vi or an AC source, because the whole purpose of a rectifier is to convert an AC into a DC. So you connect it to an AC source, the primary, and it's step down transformer. You should put like this and say it is a step down transformer. The number of turns is lesser. To the secondary of the transformer, connect to a diode, connected diode, and then the ends are connected to a load resistance RL. That's all. Simple diagram. So it consists of a step down transformer, and the primary of which is connected to an input AC source. The secondary of it is connected to a diode. Let's mark this as A, and let's mark this point as B. So then we can mark these ends as X and Y, across which there is a load resistor. You can write it as notes. I don't have to write it. So now what happens? The input signal, AC signal, is like this. During first half cycle, the point A is getting a positive voltage, and the point B is getting a negative voltage. But however, there is no diode here. The current summa passes through. You don't have to worry. Whereas here it's getting forward biased, because the P type is getting a positive voltage, so it's getting forward biased, and so then the current flows through the load resistor. Okay. Now, what happens during the second half? During second half, this point A is getting negative voltage, and the point B is getting positive voltage. So then the diode P type is connected to negative, and so it's getting reverse biased. So then directly write these notes and say that, and draw this diagram. So this is the voltage input and the voltage output. During first half, the diode D is conducting. During second half, it's reverse biased. During the next first half, forward bias. During the second half, it's getting reverse bias. During the next first half, can you see that in the first important question, they'll ask you, supposing this has got frequency 100 hertz. 100% they'll ask you, what is the frequency of this? Okay, it is still 100 hertz only. It is still 100 hertz only. Yapdi? Now, one time period is from here to here. It's still having only one oscillation. So the number of oscillations does not change. For a half wave rectifier, can you see it's only half rectified? The other half is not done. The current itself is not flowing. So that shows that's half rectified. Now we're going to write about full wave rectifier. Yeah, we'll talk about a full wave rectifier. Let's write about full wave rectifier. It consists of, again, a step down transformer, and this is primary and secondary. The primary, as usual, is connected to a AC source, thus doesn't change. The secondary is connected to a diode D1, another diode D2. This diode D1, this another diode D2. As usual, mark this as A and B. And from here, you should have common load resistor, because both the diodes should supply to the load, and then connect it to a center tap. Make sure you're connecting it to the center. The center tap T has to be at the center. This is load resistor, so you can mark it as X and Y. That's all. This is the diagram. Finished. So what are you going to write? This is the input voltage, and during the first half cycle, the point A is getting a positive voltage, point B is getting a negative voltage. Diode D1 gets forward bias, diode D2 gets reverse bias. Thus, diode D1 is starting to conduct. During the second half, diode D1 is getting negative voltage. Point A is getting negative voltage, and point B is getting positive voltage. So diode D1 gets reverse bias, whereas diode D2 now get forward bias. So eventually, whether D1 or D2 is conducting, you see the direction which its current is going to flow through, X, Y, A, X, Y, T. When D1 is getting forward biased. When D2 is getting forward biased, it's B, X, Y, T. The fact that the current always flows from X to Y shows that it's only unidirectional current. Correct? And so then let's draw the graph, which is the input voltage. This is the V input. We're going to draw the V output. It's fully rectified because either D1 or D2 alternatively does a forward bias, and so then definitely it's fully rectified. So then in this case, they'll ask you a question. Supposing this is 100 hertz, what will be the voltage of this? It's be 200 hertz. Because for every one time, there are two oscillations. The oscillation doesn't come to the negative side, but still it's on the same side. Correct? So then that's what it is. The lesson is complete. And I forgot to tell you one thing. One is about rate of recombination. There's always a question that comes on rate of recombination. And that is, at equilibrium, the number of, at the junction, that there'll be electron hole pair which is getting generated. And they will also combining. So then number of creation is equal to destruction. பியூட்டிஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும் தெரியுமா? நம்ம லைஃப்பில் நடக்கிறதும் அதுதான். ஒரு புது குழந்தை பிறக்கும்போது ஒரு வயசானவங்க இறந்து போகிறதுங்கிறது உலக நியதி இல்லையா? அப்படி தானே கடவுள் ஹஸ் கிரியேட். அது மாதிரி பியூட்டிஃபுல்லாக அட் ஈக்குலிபிரியம் த கிரியேஷன் இஸ் ஈக்குவல் டு டிஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன். That is number of electron, that's known as recombination. Destruction is occurring by means of recombination. Creation and recombination. So this recombination, let's see, when creation is equal to recombination, that happens at equilibrium. You know that that rate of recombination we can say is proportional to Ne into Nh. So rate of recombination is equal to capital R into Ne into Nh, where this is known as recombination coefficient. My handwriting is bad, but I'm sure you all can understand recombination coefficient. This is for Ne into Nh போட்டினாலே, I'm talking about extrinsic. Ne Nh வந்துருது. But for intrinsic, you know that it will be R into Ni square, because Ne and Nh are the same. So then with that applying, the rate of recombination can also be for an intrinsic as R into Ni square. So at equilibrium, there's no difference. Both of them are dummy diodes. Okay, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic. So R into Ni square is equal to R into Ne into Nh, where R and R get cancelled. Thus Ni is equal to root of Ne into Nh. So this Ni is a charge carrier concentration, intrinsic charge carrier concentration. The E may be what they call it as donor electron charges or something like that, and this will be acceptor charges. I'll show you a sum which will help you to understand. So this completes the video, but I will continue the video with one numerical.